Hello everybody, welcome to the Cold and Dark channel. My name is Jet Wildcat, and on September 10th, 2024, a collision between an A350 and a CRJ-900 at the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport occurred. Here's what we know so far about this incident. This report is written by Simon Radecki over at the Aviation Herald, an Endeavor Canadair CRJ-900 on behalf of Delta Airlines, registration November 302 Papa Quebec, performing flight Delta A350 from Atlanta, Georgia, down to Lafayette, Louisiana, with 56 souls on board, had been taxiing out for departure along Taxiway Echo, turned onto Taxiway Hotel, then stopped well short of the hold position marking for runway 8 right, as they waited for another aircraft to proceed onto the runway. A Delta Airlines Airbus A350, November 503 Delta November, performing Delta Flight 295 from Atlanta, Georgia, over to Haneda, Tokyo's Haneda Airport in Japan, with 221 souls on board, was following the CRJ alongside Taxiway Echo when the crew reported a problem they needed to investigate and requested to stop somewhere out of the way. Ground instructed them to carry on Taxiway Echo and hold short of Taxiway Victor. Shortly after the crew reported that they hit something, another voice on the radio reported that the whole tail section of the CRJ had been knocked over. Responding emergency services reported that the CRJ's tail section had been knocked over. There was no fire or smoke at the time. The crew reported that they had lost almost all hydraulic pressure, and that there had been only a little pressure left. The the CRJ obviously sustained substantial damage to its aircraft, and the A350 sustained damage to the right-hand wing of their aircraft. In the world we live in, obviously, the great thing is that we have YouTube and excellent creators such as Vast Aviation. This is from You Can See ATC over on YouTube, and they capture this entire event. So let's review it. I'm gonna skip past the all of the write-up.
Delta 295 Heavy, hold short of Victor, advise me when you're ready.
All right, we just hit something on the taxiway. Could you tell us what it was? Ground, Delta 295.
I just noticed that.
So that's the first indication, as you hear the A350 is on ground frequency and the CRJ at that point is on tower frequency. So they're on two separate frequencies, and they see the CRJ start to move. Now, there's been a lot of questions. Oh, Taxiway Victor is restricted to aircraft 176 feet wingspan, and the A350 has a slightly longer wingspan. That restriction is only up until basically Foxtrot 1. So what we have to get into our mind is the aircraft is not holding short of Victor, so to speak. It's holding short of Foxtrot 1. That changed a few years back when they added T concourse to the airport, or the north side of T concourse. It is a common phrase to hold short of Taxiway Victor because people coming off the Victor loop are typically going to taxi Foxtrot to the ramp. So that's why they say holding short of Victor, but the Airbus is not on Taxiway Victor. And at no point will it enter Taxiway Victor. The aircraft will taxi on all the routes that they can. So I saw a comment on actually the report that I just read that said, well, they were on a taxiway that was restricted. No, the restriction is around the loop. So if you look here, this part of Taxiway Victor is restricted because there's a sound wall right alongside this taxiway, just outside of the safety area. However, it restricts due to how close that wall is. But up near here, they are perfectly fine. The only thing they have to do is hold short to make sure that aircraft have the ability to come off the Victor loop, come up Fox 1, and taxi Foxtrot to wherever ramp they're going to. Meanwhile, the Endeavor aircraft was moving up into the hull bar with Delta A350, I believe, sitting on the runway waiting for departure, or if they hadn't already been cleared. So everything was moving as it should. The reason they haven't also put the A350 on tower frequency was they indicated to the ground controller that they had to basically leave the line and figure out an issue with the aircraft. So there was no need for them to get off tower or ground frequency, whereas the CRJ was ready to go for departure, so they go to tower frequency. So that's why you hear two different voices. You hear, them calling ground, and so the female's voice is the ground controller, and the tower or the male voice is the tower controller, obviously. So let's go back. So you hear him call up ground. The ground controller up in the tower probably is not aware at this point of what just happened until, somebody probably points it out to her. She's more worried about keeping the traffic moving. So that's why you hear a couple calls from Delta 295 to the ground controller with no response.
Hit something on the taxi.
So anybody who flies or anything, it's never a good thing when you say, yeah, I think I just hit something. A lot of perspective has to be put onto this. Is the A350 is because it's such a big airplane, you are not going to be able to see that wingtip from where they are. So even if they were to have looked out the right side of the aircraft, they would have seen the CRJ, but they would not have been able to see their wingtip at that point.
Taxiway. Could you tell us what it was? Ground, Delta 295.
So again, you notice that the tower controller keys up there. The A350 is not on this frequency, so this tower controller says something to. There was a exit jet holding short on the other side of it, right at hotel. And either he had just cleared or was talking to this guy, and he said, I just noticed that this tail of the RJ is missing, which again is a weird thing to say. You don't typically say that. That's not in the normal vocabulary of air traffic controllers, that the tail on the CRJ is missing. And then they also offer any assistance or immediate assistance. I have an issue with that as well, because again, it's such a non-normal event. Even if the Endeavor aircraft doesn't, you see this, and I mean, if I was the controller, I'd say, hey, we have something weird going on. It looks like aircraft damage. I'd rather have the fire crew out there and not need them than to need them and to not have them. So, but again, I'm not blaming the controller, obviously. At that point, I think that the Endeavor pilots are still trying to figure out what just happened to their aircraft.
I just noticed that the tail on the RJ is missing. So Endeavor 5526, hold your position, and do you require any immediate assistance?
We're holding our position and stand by on no immediate assistance. We'll need a tow though.
So, at least in their indication, there's no fire, there's no smoke. They haven't been told anything from the back of the airplane. they just felt obviously the collision, and they're still trying to figure out what is wrong with their aircraft. I don't think I think they're starting to get a picture of what happened. Is that their tail is no longer attached to the airplane. But they're trying to figure out, obviously, is it. So when they say they required a tow, that is probably because they are getting an indication that they have lost hydraulic pressure, for whatever reason. Anytime you lose hydraulic pressure, you lose nose wheel steering, you lose the ability to taxi the aircraft. So you need to be able to get a tow. Luckily at Atlanta, the response there is pretty quick, and I should know. So it says an unknown station.
The whole tail of that CRJ's off. Yeah, we got the CRJ-900 with its tail off here off of Foxtrot 2.
So these pilots are obviously keying up. Yeah, the tower controller just said it, but they might have just got on frequency and, didn't know if it was already reported. So they're not just piling on. They're trying to make sure that everybody understands what is happening short of 8 left, or 8 right, excuse me.
Ground, you copy 295.
So for like the third or fourth time, Delta 295 is requesting, and I think at this point the ground controller is finally being told, hey, we got an issue. I think that A350 just took out the tail of that CRJ holding short of 8 right. But of course, the ground controller is not looking up there. They are looking, taxi routes, clearing people into and out of the ramps onto the active taxiways. So, she may not be aware, and at this point she's going, hey, or the tower controller might be, going, hey, that A350 just took out the tail of that CRJ.
Delta 295, hold short of Victor. It does appear that you struck the RJ that's holding short of 8 right.
So then she finally responds and says, continue to hold short of Victor, and it does appear that you struck the RJ.
Okay, that's what we hit then. Yeah, we were on center line. Instructions were echo short of Victor. We're holding short of Victor, and understand. Thank you.
So again, there was a lot of comments on this tape and on the report of why did he say they were on center line. Well, he said they were on center line kind of to CYA or cover your butt, to say, hey, we did exactly what we were told. You told us to echo short of Victor and that we were on the center line. So it wasn't like they deviated to the left or the right of the center line. And, basically, hey, we did what we were told. I do understand that. Because at this point, they're going, well, we don't want somebody to say, oh, they did not taxi correctly and got off the taxi or the center line. And again, that is why we have center lines at airports, is to provide the most amount of wingtip clearance. So that's why they said that. It wasn't because they were trying to cover for something. They were just kind of explaining it so it's documented. So.
What did they hit?
So an unknown station, I think I know who it is. I think it's Airport Ops, but I could be wrong. Says, what did they hit? And because it's such a shock. I mean, Atlanta runs through 2,500 ops a day, and this hardly ever happens. So to hear that on frequency has got to be a weird, a weird thing to hear. So then the next part, you hear tower call up Endeavor.
Tower Endeavor 6526.
Go ahead.
Or excuse me, Endeavor call tower.
Yeah, we're expecting there to be a hydraulic leak behind us. We're showing dual hydraulic failure from system 1 and 3.
Endeavor 5526, Roger. We're going to go ahead and have the emergency vehicles come out and check you guys.
And again, so when she says, hey, we suspect there's a hydraulic failure and a hydraulic leak, they probably don't know the damage to the aircraft. So they don't know that the tail is sitting on the, sideways. They probably just assume that they got hit by something and it fractured a hydraulic line, and now they're disabled on the taxiway. So that's kind of why they say that. Or, they don't know, were they leaking before, or little do they know that no, their tail is no longer attached to the aircraft, and that's what caused the hydraulic failure. A lot of things go into that tail. So you have hydraulic lines that obviously control. You have flight control wires that go to the tail and control the rudder and the elevators. You have a lot going into that tail. It's not just a structure. It's functional. And so what is a simple, it's not like a, let's say a Cessna, where if you clip the tail, like the tip of the tail, you might break a light, but you're not going to, and you might, obviously do damage, but it's going to be superficial. It's not going to be, necessarily structural. But on a CRJ and on a lot of these bigger airplanes, yeah, it's going to be structural and, substantial.
They'll check out the taxiway. And there's an operator. Have the
1 and 3.
5526, Roger. We're going to go ahead and have the emergency vehicles come out and check you guys out. There's an operations vehicle behind you there. They'll check out the taxiway, and if you need anything else, just let me know.
What was I thinking? Endeavor 5526.
So it's at this point that the emergency response vehicles, the RF vehicles, are dispatched, as well as airport ops, if they haven't already. Having worked in airport ops, a lot of times, if we hear something on frequency, and this is why we listen to frequency at all times, is so we can catch something like this and be there and before, so we can start documenting and maybe go through what we have to do to secure the scene. They don't show it on here, but we'll go over the procedures of what probably ops is doing at this point. So as it says, after emergency vehicles respond, they are transferred over to a discrete frequency. So typically we pull it off of the main frequency, so as not to clog up the frequency. That is a discrete frequency. I'm not going to obviously disclose that. But yes, we're going to pull them off the frequency and be able to talk to both aircraft. Because it's important. It also allows us to talk with the flight crews to kind of discuss what they want to do and coordinate what we see on the ground. So that is why we pull off to discrete frequency. So I believe that's the end of the ATC tapes. So there's not a lot of information there, but it's enough to kind of understand partially what happens. So here's the taxi route that the A350 and the CRJ took. So the CRJ is in the green, The yellow is the A350. So as you can see, they make the hard turn onto Foxtrot. Then they come back on Echo, and you might be wondering, why do they do that? Yeah, there was an aircraft sitting in this section. So at big airports, let's say they're going from here to JFK. They may have a flow time in Kennedy, so they're ready to go, but they have to go hold somewhere until they can move. And obviously, you don't want to hold them over here. And basically, they're ready. So once they get close enough to departure time, or their edict time, they can move forward. So that's why you see the hard turn on to Foxtrot and then back over to Echo. As they're coming down Echo, the CRJ comes out of ramp 3 and taxis out into the runway. And so it's right here that they collide. So the next video is, and I was waiting for this potentially to come out. So this is CCTV cameras from T-Concourse. So this isn't just, on the parking garage. This is from the actual terminal, so I'm not sure how this got released. So I've worked a couple events like this, and CCTV cameras are designed to be closed circuit, right? Only for certain people to view, and somehow they keep getting released. But it helps people like us that are kind of explaining the events. So it's a very short video, and you can just see it. Boom. And so as you can see, the main gear looks like it's about lined up with this sign. So if we go back to the previous slide, oops, that's not what I meant to do. So that sign is about here. So that airplane parked right here, which means that the front of the aircraft is maybe here. So it looks like they're not all the way up. And if they had pulled up to kind of where I suspect they were supposed to, this would have never happened. Because if you look, they clip it very, very toward the back of the tail. So if they were maybe 10 feet forward, which would have been enough space, I think they would have cleared it. The aircraft is not that big. So as you can see, there's the bunk. You might be saying, how did they do that much damage at that slow speed? Well, obviously you got momentum, energy of the A350, and so that is obviously the result. Obviously, as the pictures kind of come out, you see kind of how far they are back. So right here is the taxi lane that the A350 was on. Like I said, I suspect what happened is basically they saw the CRJ start to move, assumed that because as you can see, the runway is clear. So there was a guy sitting on the runway. This guy was waiting, and this exit jet was waiting as well. So what usually happens is they'll clear somebody for takeoff, and then they'll say, hey, Endeavor, runway 8 right, line up and wait. And so you keep moving. Typically it's one, unless they're going to clear this guy. So that may have been what happened. But this guy appears to have needed to pull up a little bit more. Anyway, again, we're not here to assign blame. As the NTSB does their report, preliminary report should come out probably in about 30 to 40 days. But from what I can tell, excellent response by airport ops and fire, and professional communication with the tower and ground controller. Crazy events here at the Atlanta airport. This is the Cold in the Dark channel. Jet Wildcat signing off. We'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.